You step off the wooden stairs onto the quay at Billingsgate, and the Thames hits you all at once. The smell of fish and tar. The shouts of lumpers hauling barrels up from wherries. The slap of water against timber pilings, music as a cold barge slides past low and heavy in the current. It's early morning in the 1700s and London is already working. A porter jostles past you with a crate on his shoulder, muttering an apology you barely hear over the din. Somewhere behind you, a clerk is tallying sacks of grain with a pencil stub, lips moving as he counts. The river is the highway here, no bridges downstream past London Bridge for miles. Music, so everything flows through these docks. If you want to move goods, move people, or move yourself across the city, you're negotiating with watermen, paying tolls, or walking. The light is soft and gray, filtered through cold smoke that hangs in the air. Even this early, you can see the masts of ships crowding the Pool of London, a forest of rigging that stretches east toward the sea. This is how London connects to the world through water, muscle, and haggling. But over the next century and a half, that's going to change. The city is about to build itself into something new, piece by piece, upgrade by upgrade, and you're about to walk through it. Between 1700 and 1830, London is assembling the foundations of modernity, music shifting from a smoke-filled medieval port to an engineered city primed for transformation across 12 stops and 130 years. We will track 3 critical upgrades. Movement from river crossings to early steam, light as the city begins to music, reclaim the night, and information as newspapers and postal networks tighten. You won't see railways or telegraphs yet, but you will witness the workshops and systems where these future leaps were born. This is the foundation era, an age where London is paved, policed, and hungry for the explosion to come. Let's start walking. The spray from the Thames is still cold on your face as you make your way north along the bank. And within a few strides, you're standing near the custom house watching the river do its work. The river crowds with vessels, music of every size. Collars from Newcastle, Dutch flyboats, fishing smacks, passenger wherries, darting between the larger ships like water beetles. The tide is in, which means the music current runs fast and the watermen are busy. You flag one down and he names his price. 6 pence to cross to Suffolk. You counter with 4 pence. He shrugs and nods. The waterman pulls hard on the oars, angling upstream to compensate for the current around you. Other boats are doing the same dance, and you can hear the shouted insults and jokes that pass between crews. The water smells like sewage and industry. This is the fastest way across if you don't want to fight the crowds on London Bridge, the only bridge spanning the Thames for miles. As you approach the far bank, a cold barge passes close enough that you feel the wake. Landing fees apply on the Suffolk side, a penny to the wolfkeeper, and the system runs on handshakes and reputation. The crossing took maybe 10 minutes, but it required timing, haggling, and a tolerance for risk. The river is London's main artery, and everyone's learning to navigate it. But once you're on solid ground, the real density becomes obvious. As you walk northwest through narrow lanes, the years slip past like the turnings of these medieval streets. And by the time you emerge onto Cheapside a decade later, the city has grown denser, louder, more crowded. Cheapside swallows music you whole. Shop fronts line both sides, their signs hanging overhead. A golden boot, a painted teapot, a carved lamb. These aren't music numbered addresses yet. You find a shop by its sign and its reputation. The cobbles underfoot are uneven, worn smooth in some places and broken in others. A woman selling apples from a basket calls out prices. 2 for a penny, she says. You stop and buy one, handing over a copper coin that's warm from your pocket. She bites it lightly, checking, then nods and gives you the fruit. Trust but verify. The street narrows where a tavern's upper story juts out over the walkway, and you duck slightly as you pass beneath. A hackney coach rattles past, forcing pedestrians against the shop fronts, and the driver doesn't slow. There are rules about speed and reckless driving, but enforcement is patchy. You hear a music church bell toll the hour 10:00 in the morning, and the sound carries over the noise of haggling and hammering. Time moves by bells here, not by clocks in your pocket. And if you want to know what's happening beyond your music immediate street, there's a particular kind of place where information gathers. The smell of roasting coffee beans pulls you east toward the exchange. And as you move forward through another decade, the number of printed news sheets in people's hands seems to multiply with every passing year. The coffee house door near the Royal Exchange opens into noise and smoke. Men sit at long tables, some reading news sheets, others arguing about politics or trade. A bowl of coffee costs you a penny, and the proprietor pours it from a steaming pot without much ceremony. It's bitter and strong. The walls are covered with notices, ship arrivals, auction announcements, letters held for collection. This is where information pools and spreads. A merchant at the next table is reading aloud from a printed news sheet something about a vote in Parliament, and two others are disputing his interpretation. There are dozens of these sheets now printed irregularly, sold in the streets or passed hand to hand. A man writes a letter at a corner table, his quills scratching steadily. When he finishes, he'll pay to have it carried across town, probably by a porter who knows the routes. There's no unified postal system for local delivery yet. Music, just networks of trust and payment. Someone drops a coin on the table as they leave, and the sound is sharp. In a brief lull, you finish your coffee and step music back outside. The information is spreading, but it's still slow, still human speed. Meanwhile, the physical city itself is starting to change shape. You follow the Thames westward through the changing decades, and as the 1740s give way to the 1750s, the skyline itself begins to shift. A massive construction rising from the water ahead, stone arches are climbing out of the Thames. The new Westminster Bridge has been years in the making, and now it's finally taking shape. A massive statement of engineering and ambition. This will be only the second bridge across the river in central London, and it's changing the geometry of the city entirely. The construction site rings with the clang of hammers and the shouts of overseers directing crews. A crane lifts a block of Portland stone, and you watch it swing slowly into position, guided by workers on scaffolding. The bridge is designed to carry heavy traffic, carts, coaches, livestock, and thousands of pedestrians. When it opens, it'll have toll booths at both ends. A group of apprentices walks past, and one of them glances at the bridge with obvious pride. London is building itself taller and wider, connecting pieces that used to be separate. Westminster becomes easier to reach. The South Bank becomes more valuable. New roads will radiate from the bridge approaches. A whistle blows, signaling a shift change, and workers descend from the scaffolding, their boots clattering on wooden planks. The city is stitching itself together with stone and iron. As these new routes open up during the day, the question of moving safely after dark becomes more pressing. The sun sets as you walk north into Mayfair, and instead of darkness swallowing the streets as it would have done years ago, you notice something different. After dark, St. James's glows differently. Music oil lamps mounted on posts every 30 yards or so. Music cast pools of yellow light that don't quite connect, leaving gaps of shadow between them. It's not bright, but it's better. A lamp lighter works his way down the street using a long pole to raise the wicks and adjust the flames. The lamps are required by law in many parishes now, paid for by local rates, and the effect is real. You can see well enough to avoid tripping over uneven paving, and you can make out faces. A couple walks past chatting without apparent concern. A decade ago, you wouldn't linger in these streets after full dark unless you had a lantern and company. A watchman stands at the corner, his staff leaning against the wall, his breath visible in the cold air. He's part of the night system, hired by the parish to deter trouble. He sees you, assesses, and goes back to watching the street. Crime hasn't vanished, but the risk calculus has shifted slightly in favor of honest pedestrians. A coach approaches and you step aside as it passes, its own lanterns swinging. The light meter is ticking upward slowly, and while the streets are getting safer, the workshops are getting more ambitious. The clatter of wheels on cobbles grows louder as you move into the next decade. Coaches multiplying on every major route. And you duck into a workshop off Leather Lane to see where all this speed is being built. Iron springs flex and snap back as the coachmaker tests them. The workshop smells like leather oil and sawdust, and the craftsman is fitting springs to a new carriage frame, testing each one for tension. Outside, you can hear the clatter of coaches on their routes, running scheduled services between major inns. The coach network has improved dramatically in recent decades. Turnpike roads are faster and better maintained. And the vehicles themselves are lighter and more reliable. A trip that used to take a full day now takes half that. You ask the coachmaker how business is booming. He says everyone wants speed. In a corner, an apprentice sketches something that looks like a cylinder with a piston. When you ask what it is, he explains it's a steam engine design, something he's studying in his off hours. Steam is being used for pumping water and powering a few mills, and there's talk it might one day move vehicles. He doesn't sound entirely convinced, but he's curious enough to keep drawing. Leaving the workshop, a music mail coach thunders past, the driver cracking his whip. The mail is faster now, more regular, knitting the country together. London is thinking about systems, about networks. And nowhere is this more visible than along the river. Time accelerates as you walk east through the turn of the century. The smell of the river growing stronger with each step until suddenly the marshlands give way to something entirely new. Walls, gates, and music, industrial fortress rising where there was once only mud. The West India docks stretch before you like a small city made of brick and water. Enclosed basins carved out of marshland, surrounded by high walls and guarded gates. Ships unload directly music into warehouses protected from the river thieves who used to swarm the open wharves. The entire complex is designed for speed and security. A clerk checks your paperwork at the gate before waving you through. Only authorized personnel allowed. This is private property, heavily regulated, and the rules are enforced by dock police who patrol the perimeters. You watch a crane lift a hogshead of sugar from a hold. The mechanism powered by workers' music walking inside a large wheel. It's efficient, almost mechanical. The air smells music like spices and rum and salt water. Everything here is organized, categorized, counted. The old chaos of the river is being tamed, channeled music into systems that generate profit and predictability. A ship's bell rings the hour, and you check your pocket watch against it. They match. Time is becoming standardized because coordination matters music when you're handling this much cargo. London is getting serious about infrastructure, and soon that infrastructure will include something that changes how the streets themselves look and feel. You walk back toward the city center as another decade passes, and as dusk falls, you notice the quality of light has changed completely. Brighter, steadier, almost unnatural in its clarity, palm after sunset stops people in their tracks. The street is illuminated by gaslight, and the lamps burn with a steady, bright flame that's startlingly different from oil. The light is whiter, stronger, and it pushes the shadows back much farther. You can read a newspaper under these lamps. A few people have stopped to stare. The gas is piped underground from music works near the river, distributed through iron mains to street lamps and increasingly to private buildings. Shops can stay open later, theaters can extend their hours, and streets feel safer. A tour's shop front glows from inside, showing off bolts of cloth in colors that would be invisible by candle light. A lamp lighter walks past, though his job is music changing. Instead of carrying oil and wicks, he just turns a valve at the base of each lamp, and the gas ignites with a soft pop. He finishes the street in a fraction of the time it used to take. A poster on a wall advertises a lecture on gas technology. The upgrade is being discussed, demonstrated and sold as progress. Not everyone is convinced yet. There are worries about explosions, about monopolies. But the momentum is building, the night is changing, and with better light comes music, better streets, planned rather than inherited. The narrow medieval lanes you've been walking through for decades suddenly give way to something planned, geometric, almost music, shockingly modern, and you realize you've stepped into a new London entirely. Regent Street announces itself. This is one of the music new planned boulevards, and the difference from the old medieval lanes is stark. The street is wide, straight, and lined with uniform buildings designed by architects who thought about city lines and grandeur. The shop fronts are large and bright with plate glass windows displaying goods in carefully arranged scenes. A printer's shop window is full of books, maps, and illustrated magazines. You stop to look, and a shopkeeper inside gestures for you to come in. The air smells like ink and paper. There are racks of publications, fashion plates, satirical prints, travel narratives. The cost of printing has dropped, and the variety has exploded. You can buy a magazine for a few pence. The street is busy with afternoon traffic. Carriages roll past, some painted in fashionable colors. A crossing sweeper clears a path through the muck for a lady in a fine cloak. She drops a coin into his hand without looking. A constable stands near a corner, part of the new Metropolitan Police. He's in uniform, unarmed, except for a truncheon. The city is being organized, policed, and managed in ways that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. Sometimes that means building upward and outward. Sometimes it means digging down. You head back toward the river, drawn by rumors of an impossible project. And as you reach Rotherhithe, the ground itself seems to open up, a vast shaft descending into darkness. The shaft drops away into blackness. Down there, Mark Bruno's tunneling shield is slowly burrowing beneath the Thames. The project has been underway for years, plagued by floods and setbacks, but it continues. The idea itself is audacious. A tunnel linking the two banks without needing a bridge or a boat. The shaft is deep and dark, lit by lanterns that create flickering shadows on brick walls. You can hear digging and pumping from below, a constant mechanical rhythm. Workers emerge from the tunnel entrance, their clothes soaked and their faces streaked with mud. One of them coughs deep and wet and spits before heading toward the pay office. An engineer explains the shield mechanism to a visitor, sketching diagrams in the air. The shield allows miners to excavate while simultaneously installing iron frames and brickwork, protecting them from cave-ins. It's innovative, experimental, and expensive. And it's not clear yet whether it'll succeed. But the fact that it's being attempted says something about London's ambitions. The tunnel is a bet on the future. The city is thinking bigger, digging deeper, pushing the limits of what construction can achieve. While engineers dig beneath the Thames, administrators are planning something that will change how information moves. As you walk through the late 1820s, the conversations around you shift. Less about bridges and tunnels, more about paper, postage, and the radical idea that sending a letter shouldn't cost a fortune. Talk of postal reform fills the stationer's shop near Charing Cross. There's a proposal circulating to create a uniform penny post where any letter can be sent anywhere in the country for a single flat rate prepaid by the sender. It sounds almost too simple to work, but the arguments are compelling. The shopkeeper is skeptical but intrigued. He sells paper and sealing wax. You buy a music sheet and ask his opinion. If it happens, he says it'll change everything. Right now, music sending a letter across London costs several pence. Sending one across the country is expensive enough to make you think twice. Outside, a mail coach pulls up to an inn, the guard blowing a horn to announce its arrival. The mail is already faster and more reliable than it used to be, running on fixed schedules, but it's still priced in a way that limits music access. A penny post would democratize information, letting ordinary people send and receive letters without calculating the cost. The information upgrade is almost ready to leap forward. London is on the edge of something new. But there's one more transformation brewing, bigger than all the others combined. The ground trembles slightly beneath your feet as you approach the edge of the city in 1830. And ahead you see construction on a scale that dwarfs even the docks, raw earth, surveying equipment, investors in top hats gesturing at blueprints, construction ground sprawls where the London and Birmingham railway terminus will rise. The station isn't built yet, but the route is being surveyed and the investors are committed. Steam locomotives are already running on shorter lines outside the city, and everyone knows it's only a matter of time. A surveyor sets up his equipment, sighting along the planned route and making notes. When you ask when the first trains will run, he estimates another few years, maybe less. The railway will link London to the industrial Midlands in a matter of hours, faster than any coach. The city music sounds the same, hooves on cobbles, vendors calling, church bells marking time. But there's a new undercurrent now, a sense that the old patterns are about music to break. The upgrade meters are all maxed out, waiting for the next leap. Movement is about to become mechanical, light is spreading, information is accelerating. A group of investors walks past, their conversation music, animated with numbers and projections. One glances at the construction music and smiles. London is ready, the foundations are laid. The systems are in place. And the city is about to explode into a new era. The future is arriving. This walk is built from period maps and detailed surveys alongside contemporary prints, music, and engravings that provide visual references for architecture and daily life. Diaries, letters, and newspapers offer personal perspectives on commerce and transport, while city records document the development of infrastructure like lighting and policing. These historical sources, music, directly inform the AI-generated visuals. You've just walked through 130 years of London, preparing itself for modernity. You've crossed the Thames by boat and on new bridges. Watched the streets get brighter, seen coffee houses turn into information hubs and docks turn into industrial machines. You've stood in workshops where steam was just an idea and watched gas lamps push back the night. But we've stopped right at the edge of the transformation. The railways haven't arrived yet. The telegraph hasn't started clicking. The underground hasn't opened. The city has built the foundation, but the real acceleration is still ahead. Next time the railways arrive, the nights brighten with gaslight, and London starts upgrading faster than anyone can keep up. We'll ride the first trains, walk gas-lit streets that never sleep, send messages by telegraph, and descend into the underground. The movement, light, and information meters all leap forward at once, and London becomes the template for modern cities everywhere. The upgrade is about to go exponential. See you then.